What is going on, everybody? It's your boy John, and welcome back to Gearbox. So today we are back on the topic of aviation. I know I have taken a break from aviation as far as YouTube is concerned, but to be honest with you, I've taken a break from aviation as a whole. For those who are unaware, I recently acquired my instrument rating at the tail end of last year, which I am super proud of myself for doing. I got that rating in about 5.5 or 6 months. So really put my nose to the grindstone there. Did a shitload of flying, did a shitload of studying, and of course it all paid off. Now, on the topic of getting my instrument rating, I wanted to pick up the camera today and really talk through one of the biggest learning lessons that I had in my instrument training, which actually, believe it or not, came on my check ride. So we'll get to that in a second, but before I tell you that story, I want to set the groundwork. My journey in aviation started in 2014. As far as my own training, I have pictures of me in a car seat up in general aviation aircraft. So it actually started a long time ago, but whatever. I got my private license in 2016, and like I said, just got my instrument rating in 2024. For my private license, all I flew was Cessnas equipped with a Garmin 430. From there, I went off to college, played college football, and had the awesome opportunity to fly a bunch of warbirds and stuff like that, which is a whole different topic. But they were not equipped with a Garmin 430. It was all steam gauges. And then going into my instruments, I was flying 172s equipped with 2 G5s and a G650 GPS, so a step up from the 430. And of course, that in of itself kind of gave me some challenges, just familiarizing myself with a new GPS and really understanding the workflows that are associated not only with your standard GPS procedures, flying VFR waypoints or just clicking direct airport, but also going in there, loading IFR procedures, approaches, that type of stuff, and really using the GPS to its full potential. This is not the actual topic of the video, but learning to use your GPS and avionics as a whole to minimize workload and create more efficiencies in the cockpit, especially in a single pilot IFR situation, that just needs to happen. You have to familiarize yourself with the avionics. And so that was one of the biggest hurdles I had early on with my training. The flying stuff and just learning how to fly IFR is, just takes some time, but it's not difficult. But really a big part in that is once you become familiar with the plane you're flying and the avionics you're flying, it's going to make your life a heck of a lot easier. So now that we have all of the aviation background stuff out of the way, let's get into the actual massive lesson that I learned during my check ride. So whether you're super familiar with IFR check rides or not, I'm not going to go into all the details, but essentially what we're doing is doing holds, doing different types of approaches, precision, non-precision, etc. In my case, I did have to fly a DME arc. Doesn't matter, not the point. One of the biggest things on your check ride that you're going to have to do and kind of show that you are capable of doing is a partial panel approach. So basically simulating a avionics failure in some way, shape, or form. In my case, throughout all of my training, what we did, since once again we had 2 G5s, one was set up as kind of a HSI, and the other one was a primary flight display, attitude indicator, had the altitude band over here, speed band on the left, whatever, turn coordinator, the whole nine. What we would do is fail the top G5 as the primary flight display. So then basically what we're doing is we are shifting our attention from the broken PFD over to the steam gauges for airspeed and altitude and everything like that. We're referencing the GPS as far as how close on our course are we and what corrections do we need to make, so on and so forth. One of the biggest things that I learned over time doing partial panels was that less is more as far as corrections that you're making, you know, especially when you're not necessarily on course. Just give it a little encouragement one way or the other and you'll be fine. But it is funny looking back at ForeFlight and seeing the zigzag path as you're going into final. It humbles you a good bit. But anyway, at a certain point of practicing partial panel, I felt 100% confident. Really going into the check ride, my biggest concern was flying a DME arc and staying within the boundaries of what needed to be stayed in to have a passing grade on that particular section of the check ride. But that was not the case. Flew that one just fine. So anyway, we get to the check ride, go through a couple approaches, and we're about halfway through. We are in a hold, getting ready to set up for a ILS into Anderson Airport. We are holding at a VOR, and my instructor, or examiner, fails a G5, but not in a way that I expected it to be failed. Instead of putting a post-it note over it and me going to my typical flow, he powered the G5 off, which was fine for a little bit. And then the second G5 went, like, it changed its function. So instead of now being a HSI or something, it went to a primary flight display, or I forget exactly what it changed from and what it changed to, if that makes sense. But the whole point in me saying this is, I had never seen a partial panel with a G5 actually turned off. Now, to maybe some of you that are not instrument pilots, or maybe not pilots at all and just interested in learning about aviation, that might not seem like a big deal to you. I'm here to tell you that is a massive deal, because I was not expecting it. In aviation, we talk about the concept of staying ahead of the plane, thinking about all the different scenarios, having all those scenarios ironed out in your head. The problem was, I didn't even consider this as a possible thing for a G5 to just change its function automatically, and I was in some deep shit. Keep in mind, we are currently in a hold. We are setting up for an ILS. We have a failure on this G5, which requires us to go from a precision approach to a non-precision localizer approach, which then changes our minimums, which then changes this, then changes that. It is a massive avalanche of shit coming down my way, as I'm also trying to figure out how in the hell I'm going to manage to fly a legitimate, safe approach with a failure that I'm not even aware of. So what it came down to was, I know we have backup avionics for tracking this VOR. I know we've got all of these backup instruments, but I also know that the G5 is capable of getting back to where we were. I just didn't know how. And so I kind of took the G5 out of my mind for a second. I'm like, let me go back to what I know. Let's go back to the gyros. Let's retune the localizer in nav2. We'll activate nav2. Let's identify it again. Let's make sure that we're good. All while telling ATC, in this case, my examiner, hey, we've got a partial panel. I need some time to troubleshoot before I can shoot this approach. So please give me an extended, hold time for me to do so. And that was good. And that's really what the examiner is looking for, is your ability to say, hey guys, too much is going on, time out. I need to do something in order to make a safe approach to land. And I think that's where I passed. But that did not get me out of the shit as far as flying this approach. So as I am absolutely fumbling around, I'm sure I was sweating profusely. Things were going poorly in my head, and I thought we were just going to turn around and go home, right? It was that bad. My instructor, or examiner, went ahead and he's like, hey, why don't you push that button on the working G5? I'm like, okay. Push it, and a menu comes up. It's like, now what happens if you twist that knob? All right. He's like, keep twisting it. Look at all the options that come up. And sure enough, basically what he was showing me was, yes, this one G5 failed, but you can change the function of the working G5 to give you what you want. You don't need a primary flight display. What you do need is to be able to track the VOR. So change it to the appropriate setting to track a VOR. And once we did that, my sigh of relief was probably heard around the world. It was one of the just most nerve-wracking things that I've ever gone in, because to be honest, once I flew the DME, once I flew the precision, I knew that there was a non-precision coming up, which 9 times out of 10 is probably going to come when partial panel comes into play. And I felt really, really, really good about how I was flying that day. And for all of that, in my mind, at that point in time, to go out the window was not a great realization. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is John giving us this incoherent rambling about one minor mishap in his check ride? And that's a fair question. And the answer to that is, I want you to learn from my experience. Whether you're about to take a instrument check ride, whether you are an instrument rated pilot, maybe you own your own Bonanza or something, and everyone always goes up into the air with this kind of false sense of security of, oh, that'll never happen to me, or I already know my plane as well as I could. There's no need for me to keep reading up on stuff or anything like that. When in reality, you don't know something until it slaps you in the face, right? And this is particularly important for students, but it should resonate with everyone, where, just because you typically go through a procedure in one type of way, practice multiple types of ways of doing that. This is something that you should be talking to your CFI about, not only for your sake, but also for his ability to teach, an instrument course in this case. And this is something that after my check ride, we debriefed that particular thing for about 20 minutes with my examiner, and he kind of grilled me on it, but he had every right to grill me on the fact that I did not know my plane inside and out, and that was a sticking point for me. We then had a 40-minute flight home, back to home base with my CFI, or double I guess, and we talked about the check ride, and I told my CFII, I was like, listen, man, I know exactly how you taught it, and that's fine. And had he failed it in that way, I would have been fine, like zero question whatsoever. But I think you should start throwing this into your kind of repertoire as well, just to give people more exposure to working with these different instruments. A lot of times in the instrument world, a lot of our focus is on the GPS to make sure that we're flying holds appropriately, or to make sure that our LPV approach is loaded in there and activated when ATC clears us for the approach, and maybe we're setting minimums in there, whatever. But when there are other avionics, especially like glass avionics, that have way more capabilities than we probably need in most cases, guess what? Because those avionics are in that particular plane that you're going on your check ride with, or maybe it's the plane that you fly cross country, you are expected to know that like it is the back of your freaking hand. And if you don't, and it catches you with your pants down, you are going to be in a world of hurt. Hopefully not literally, but probably at a minimum from an ego perspective, because I know I was there, and I know that it was not very fun. So anyway, guys, I know I probably did a slightly okay job at explaining that. There's really a lot of details that are hard to put into a, let's call it 12 to 15 minute video. But if you want to hear more on that experience, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to explain this to everyone. Maybe we need a part 2, I don't know. But either way, drop some comments down below. If you like this video, and maybe, just maybe, it gave you a new perspective on aviation in general or your instrument journey, please give this video a big fat thumbs up. And as always, guys, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell. You know the drill. Until next time, peace.